It is another edition of the On the Mic podcast, and I don't want to geek out and be like, "Oh, holy shit, look what we did!" But holy shit, she's back about a week early. But listen, we've missed like 3 straight pay-per-view shows. We started off so hot. It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. I wanted to save her appearance for 200, episode 200, which is right around the corner. But she is back. She's here. UFC 280 is a week away. Is the one and only Kelly Murphy. Kelly, welcome back.
Hi.
How the hell are you?
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I was gonna say the fact that we got off to such a good start, I was like, there's absolutely 0% chance that we keep this up. So it was
For sure.
bound to happen. But listen, we're about to 9 days or so shy from like the best card of the year. So what better
Is it? I
time to
see. I
start
don't know.
again?
I don't know. I think the best card happens in November. I
I'll
I
be
re-
there.
I
We'll
mean,
have to do another one.
yeah. Listen, summertime, as you can attest to, when you're not working or getting paid for your work, you're like, it's hard. It's hard. Um, I had this laptop go down for like a week, and I was on a stretch of doing interviews like 2 straight weeks, and as my microphone falls, which is always great.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, but I was on a stretch, and then the laptop things happen, and I'm just happy you're here. I thought you forgot about me. I was like, damn. Like I texted you, I was like, hey, just so you know, I'm a person and I exist. You used to be on this podcast I do. I don't know if you know about it. But yeah, good things. I mean, today was and this is Thursday that we're shooting this on the 13th. I just announced doing the sports talk site show, at least gonna shoot for twice a week. So
There
got
you
that kicked
go.
off today. Same channel, so make sure you subscribe. And here we are on the mic. I think it's 198, so you're just a few episodes away from episode 200.
You'll
I
just have
believe.
to feature me in 200 as well.
I listen. I think Dean Thomas was on 100, so I may have to just make that a thing and just get him on.
Only right. I mean, I can't argue that. I do love Dean Thomas.
Right, but I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We got a lot going on in these next couple weeks, including obviously UFC 280. First and foremost, start off with the easy question. How do you feel about this early morning start time?
I I can't complain. I mean, when it's a
You
card
could.
this
You
stacked,
literally could. That's why I'm
I
asking.
probably
That's why I'm
could.
asking you.
To be honest, I don't have a preference about start time. Like I almost like the earlier card just because obviously on the East Coast, the pay-per-view doesn't usually end until sometime between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
True.
And your girl's tired. I probably went out the night before. I've been sitting my
Might be
ass on
out
the
that
couch.
night.
Yeah, probably out that night. I've been watching fights for hours and hours, and it's exhausting. So I don't mind the early start time.
Yeah, me either. And listen, you just mentioned maybe you're out during fight night. We all know that I've very much enjoyed being out on fight nights. The only uncomfortable thing for me is like this start time, this for UFC 280 is 9 a.m. Central Time. I
Okay.
can't really like wake up and crack one at 9 a.m.
You
Like you
could.
you could, but then I gotta be like, well, if we were going to a Bears game, we'd be drinking at 8:30 a.m. You know, like I gotta like preface
I
it
just feel
like
like you
that.
have an excuse. It's not like you're just waking up on Saturday at 9 and cracking a beer. Like you're watching one of the best cards we are going to see this year. Like
Yeah.
you have every excuse in the book.
Especially because, like, what do you got? You got Volkan Ozdemir on like the prelims, Muhammad Makayev on the prelims. You've got Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady. Like, that's the thing. Like, I probably won't start enjoying the fight night festivities until like we get deeper into the. Listen, Lena Landsberg, Carl Rose is going to be a good fight. Not one that I'm cracking a beer for though. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's not 9 a.m. is going to be a little too early. I think a lot of my friends are going to be shocked to hear that come out of my mouth. But yeah, 9 a.m. is a little too early for me. But I like it, but it's just weird because the only good thing about it is like it's happening in the fall. When they do this in the spring and summer, when there's absolutely nothing else going on in the sports world, you're like, okay, cool. So like now what? Because like I'm sure like we both have like friend groups that not everybody watches fights. So you just want to get together with people who watch fights right after you just watched early fights, and you're like, "Do you guys? No, okay, all right,
Nope. More
yeah,
often than not, I'm stuck by myself, which honestly,
sorry."
just fine. I get
Prefer.
a little too crazy.
I think we prefer it that way for the Kelly Murphys of the world, right? We just
100%.
yeah. Well, I prefer Kelly doing Kelly things for Kelly is how we should keep it.
We love it.
Um,
We love that.
we're gonna have to. I'm gonna steal her line because she said it on the show. Deanna Bennett refer to men in her training camp, not like the one she trains with, but like men in general as distractions. So we just, if there's an
That's
early morning
amazing.
fight or if there's a late night fight, like it doesn't matter. Kelly doesn't need distractions or distractions, whatever they call them.
Don't nothing.
Yeah. So, all right, UFC 280. You said it probably the best card of the year. I disagree. I think it's UFC 281. But let's get to the bottom of it. And first and foremost, let you plug some news that your job had. Big news coming to the Sirius XM Fight Nation.
Yes, sir. We are going to be launching Won't Back Down Radio with the one and only Chris Weidman. That's going to start Monday, October 17th, 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. That will go down every Monday following that at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. I will be producing it, which I am super excited for. Chris is really excited to get on board, join the Fight Nation team, and it should be, a really good one. This week coming up, we have some fights to talk about that we'll see on Saturday, and obviously 280 is going to dominate the conversation. So it should be a good one. Everyone's really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And I couldn't be happier for you. I remember when I just started working with you and you were just you're just killing it these days in the Sirius XM studios. So congrats to you. Congrats to Chris. I have one goal and I'll make up a name. I don't care. I'll block my phone number. Either you're going to do it or I'm going to call in every Monday. We got to have the Anthony Smith, Chris Weidman buddy cop show at some point.
Those two, they crack me up. The first time I spoke to Chris, he was like, listen, I'm not the greatest with my phone, but Anthony Smith's on a different level. And then we had Chris on the show yesterday to pump up the audience and, tell him the show was coming. And the first thing Anthony said, he was like, Kelly, you think I'm bad with my phone? Like, Chris is on another level. I was like, the two of you were saying the same thing about each other. Like, I don't know who to believe.
I love it. I listen. I think that truly they need a show together, not just a radio show, a TV show, a YouTube show. So just throw it out there. I'm gonna call every week. I'm gonna be I listen. Some of the characters you guys get on the Sirius XM phone lines. Yep. I have a few of my favorites, but I may have to push for that a little bit. But UFC 280 and I can't wait. That starts Monday, October 17th. So next week, going into UFC 280 Fight Week, which is where we are, just 9 days away. Main event, vacant lightweight championship. Kelly, let's just get into it. We're going to go top to bottom here because I think it's a very top-heavy card. There are a few good fights on the prelims. I will say that, but I think it's a very top-heavy card. And it's one of those cards that's interesting because, and I'll get your thoughts on this first. Two things I want to get your thoughts on first, actually. One, you said best card of the year. It's very hard to argue that, but the UFC does this thing where sometimes the best card of the year is because they're so stacked on the main card and it kind of fizzles out in like the middle and the beginning, where I think is UFC 281 is just stacked top to bottom. What about UFC 280 makes it? Is it the stakes? Is it the two title fights? Because there's so many, actually, if you really think about it, especially in the top 3 fights, there's so many legacy-defining fights, in my opinion, at UFC 280.
I think arguably the best 2 divisions across MMA are the lightweight and bantamweight divisions. You see it in every promotion. They are pumping out contenders, very exciting fights, big names to watch. And you've got both of those belts on the line next weekend, which is just hard to argue. And we have a matchup in Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev that, gosh, ever since Charles Oliveira started dominating the lightweight division after Khabib retired, that's what everybody said. We were like, we want to see if Charles can beat the guys Khabib beat, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and then ultimately we want to see if he can beat the next closest thing to Khabib, and that's Islam Makhachev. So I think we've been building to this fight for 2 years, and it's finally, almost 2 years to the date of Khabib's last fight, I believe was October 24th, 2020. Nearly 2 years to the day, we're going to see Charles Oliveira potentially surpass Khabib as the greatest lightweight of all time, should he be able to beat Islam Makhachev. So I absolutely love that fight. And then there's just the storyline behind TJ Dillashaw obviously being suspended for the PED use, and then ultimately coming back, beating Corey Sandhagen. Whether you thought he did or not, it was an extremely competitive fight, putting himself in position to possibly get the bantamweight title back. I think there's storylines. Like I said, I think it's the 2 best divisions across MMA on display. And then obviously you have other fights as well, like Beneil Dariush and Mateus Gamrot as well. And you've got Sean O'Malley and Piotr Jan. Like, just matchups I'm super excited for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. First and foremost, let's get to the bottom of this. Beneil Dariush was on with you guys this week,
Yeah.
and he talked about Alexander Volkanovski's claims. Volkanovski claims he's the backup fighter. We're 9 days out. Do you have a gut feeling? Do you have a firm answer on who's this backup fighter?
I don't, but my best guess is that it is Alexander Volkanovski. He spoke on the MMA Hour and he said, I'm getting paid to be the backup fighter, and my corner is flying into Abu Dhabi. I don't suspect they'd be going to those lengths if he was not the backup fighter. My best guess is that possibly information was relayed to Ali Abdelaziz, Beneil Dariush's manager, that Beneil would be the backup. I have no information on this. My best guess is that maybe the plan was for Beneil to be the backup while things were in limbo with Alexander Volkanovski. 5-6 weeks ago, that man was in a cast, and who knew if he was going to be able to even get cleared to be in a position to be the backup fighter. So maybe they had Beneil Dariush in limbo, unfortunately, until Volkanovski was cleared. And now Volkanovski's the plan. So my assumption is that Alexander Volkanovski is the backup fighter. Do I think Beneil was lying, though, when he said that he was told he would be the fill-in? No, I don't.
Yeah, as someone who wrote that out, his interview with you guys, I do want to note to those that are watching, obviously not to you, but Beneil made a good point that, and I'm not saying it needs to be a new thing, but it's not in the contract. You can't really, as you just said, as Volkanovski said, he's getting paid, which would mean there's a contract for it.
Absolutely.
So, unfortunately, it sucks for Beneil, but I'd also look at it like this for Beneil. I mean, who doesn't want to fight for a title? But if you got to have that on the back of your mind, like just in case, then you kind of take focus off your fight. And I'm not saying it would have, but I would just like Beneil to continue to look at his win streak. I believe it's a 7-win streak fight, 7-fight win streak he's on now, and an opportunity. I mean, he's been screwed over left and right, so just gives him more fuel to the fire. And if he sets the stage on fire before the lightweight main event title fight, Volkanovski or not, Beneil's gonna make a serious claim for maybe, if not a title fight, one of the biggest fights in the division, if he can get past Mr. Gamrot here. So let's get it started. You kind of talked about this main event a little bit. We'll go more in depth now. I guess you said it already, right? Which, with a win, Charles Oliveira, the greatest lightweight of all time? Question mark, Kelly Murphy? In the UFC, I should say.
Yeah, right. When Khabib retired, absolutely greatest UFC lightweight of all time. What we talked about on my own show today was that he didn't give himself enough of a cushion to keep that title for very long, because he didn't have a very long title reign. I believe he defended the belt 3 times. And there was still some of a lightweight division to clear out that he didn't. Am I mad that he retired? Absolutely not. Was it the right time for him? Probably, sure. But that doesn't change the facts. Charles Oliveira has now come in, beat the same guys that Khabib's beat, if not more of a dominant fashion, if that's even possible. And now he has the chance to fight Islam Makhachev, Khabib's prodigy, the closest thing you're going to get to Khabib Nurmagomedov in 2022. If he beats him, more importantly, if he goes out there and starches him, which I don't think is going to happen, but if he goes out there and absolutely starches him, at a minimum, he's in the conversation, if not the greatest UFC lightweight of all time. I wouldn't be mad if he put him there at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I think it's very hard to argue against. And then look, I'll just throw it out there. Once that happens, if it does happen, if Charles Oliveira retains his belt, absolutely, and I don't want to hear a word from anyone in media, social media, in the back of a bar, in the back of a car. Like, I don't care. He should call for any fight he wants at that point. And that's it. It doesn't matter. Whether it's Volkanovski, whether it's McGregor, whoever Charles Oliveira wants, like, it will truly be Charles Oliveira's world, and we're all just living in it if he beats Islam Makhachev. But I will play devil's advocate, Kelly, and I will ask you, yeah, there is a blemish on Islam's record, 1 loss. Suffered early in his UFC tenure, but if you go through his UFC tenure, I understand the skill set is very comparable to Khabib Nurmagomedov, but a lot of people, and I'm not saying I feel this way, but I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, This is without a doubt the toughest test of his career. And it's not even just like, oh, this is tough. This is like, no, this is the toughest thing I've ever had to encounter. And listen, maybe having being in the gym and through the trenches with Habib prepared him for this, but maybe not, because Charles Oliveira is a different breed.
No, 1000%. I mean, up to this point, the best win of Islam Makhachev's career, I guess, would be Dan Hooker. And then you have to look at Charles Oliveira's last three is Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, and Michael Chandler. I mean, this is without a doubt the toughest test for Islam Makhachev, and Charles Oliveira is nothing to be taken lightly. I don't think Islam Makhachev is taking him lightly. I think he's speaking confidently, as he should, but you can never replicate what you're going to get from Charles Oliveira until you're in there with him, because he's unpredictable. And this man gives himself, like, he gets rocked in his fights. Like, we saw Justin Gaethje obviously put him down. We've seen other fighters put him down, but he welcomes you to come down with him, and nobody wants to. So he gives himself a bit of a breather. Whereas Islam Makhachev's not going to be afraid to go to the ground with him, of course, which is why I'm so excited to see this fight, because everybody else wants no part of Charles Oliveira on the ground. Whereas I don't think Islam Makhachev's going to have much fear. So this is just going to be so exciting. I literally, he couldn't have a better mentor than Habib. So I think he's going to be very well prepared, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
I think that's a huge difference, though. And when Habib was champion and welcoming fighters to the ground, it wasn't more of a welcoming, more as this is where it's going to happen.
Yeah, this is where we're going, because this is where I want to be.
Yeah, like I striking, what is this, my friend? Like, right? Like, we don't do that. Well, sure. He's really not. Islam's not going to have that opportunity to say this is where the fight. Like, I'll just say this. Charles dictates this fight. Islam may have the better skill set, but Charles will dictate this fight. So if it goes according to plan for Charles Oliveira, it's going to be his game plan. If it goes according to plan for Islam, it's just going to be, he's the more skilled fighter, in my opinion. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, Islam may be better at certain things, whereas I think Charles Oliveira is wildly underrated and might be a little bit more well-rounded in a sense. Like, I don't think people give his striking enough credit. And when you have Justin Gaethje saying that, when I got hit by Charles Oliveira, it felt like electricity running through my body, Gaethje's not going to say that if he doesn't mean it. So I think Oliveira's striking is wildly underrated. So like you said, we could very much see Charles Oliveira dictating this fight. But if this fight goes Islam Makhachev's way, it might be more of an Islam Makhachev, like, imposing his will on Charles, like being a little bit stronger. Whereas I think Charles might be a little bit more well-rounded in terms of skill.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think it's one of those things for Islam where if he does what he wants to do, like you said, imposing his will, that's just what he's best at. But there's no, like, he can't take anything off against Charles. You're going to have to stand and trade with him. If you go to the ground, you're going to have to wrestle with him. And if you kind of come up in the wrestling, he can still take your back and choke you out. So, it's one of those things where, like you said, well-rounded and underrated for Charles Oliveira. Islam may have strengths in a couple places, but give me, and I guess we can just start with our predictions right away. Give me the guy that's more well-rounded and has been through the fire so much more than Islam. I'm taking Charles Oliveira to retain his belt.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I picked against Charles twice in a row, against Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. I will not be doing that here. I am so high on this guy right now. He is so confident. And I think Justin Gaethje said it best. This fight will either be very exciting if it goes the way Charles Oliveira wants it to go, or it will be very boring if Islam Makhachev does get to impose his will and do exactly what he wants to do. So, and I have no idea what's going to happen. It is genuinely 50-50. My gut is telling me Charles Oliveira, though.
I like it. All right. Well, this one I'm going to have some fun with. Co-main event, bantamweight title. I'm going to say this. Thank God Aljamain Sterling went out and did what he did and got the belt from Peter Yan in their last fight. And you kind of saw them make amends out there in Abu Dhabi this week. Because when you joke around and say, put some respect on my name, Like, finally, Aljamain Sterling did that. There's no more, he's an actor, he was faking, he's
Nope.
injury prone. Like, no. This man is 21-3 in his career. And
Hasn't lost
now,
in 5 years.
right, right. And now a two-time champ. Like, he's without a doubt facing a seriously tough opponent. Probably the nicest thing I could say about TJ Dillashaw. But we're coming into this thing, and don't get mad when I say this, but he's the easiest example. When you saw Conor come back from a long layoff and you kind of saw Dustin just run right through him, right? He got the easy cowboy fight, but Dustin had his way with Conor up and not counting the leg break. But there's a thing that happens when you're away. And yes, I know Dillashaw won that fight against Corey Sandhagen. But as you said, when we first started, that fight, you could have seen it either side.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder, and Aljo's been away for a little bit, but that's due to injury. He was more recently active, more recent in these high pressure fights, these title fights. He's been in the spotlight. TJ Dillashaw's right there, and he may be just as talented, if not more talented, than Aljamain Sterling. But I think the activity of Aljo, I think the confidence of Aljo, and I think getting back what he had really just taken away from him over a really bad injury, taking the right time to recover, going in, getting the win, getting all his respect back. Like, there's no outside noise in this fight for Aljamain Sterling, and I think that sets him up very well against TJ Dillashaw.
I mean,
Please feel free
I'm
to
a big
disagree.
TJ Dillashaw fan, so
No,
let me preface everything I say with that. Um, but like I said earlier, TJ comes back, and I think when you're talking layoff, that's the fight you have to look at. And he looked competitive against Corey Sandhagen. I wouldn't be mad at you if you thought Corey Sandhagen won, and I'm obviously not mad at you if you thought TJ won because he did on the scorecards. But regardless, very competitive. So I think if we were going to talk layoff and octagon Russ, that's where you would have seen it, where I didn't really see it as much. Then obviously he had another injury after that he had to recover from. So I don't think inactivity is going to play a big role. The outside noise is always going to be the same for TJ Dillashaw for the rest of his career. No matter who he fights, no matter what he's fighting for, people will always bring up the PED use because why wouldn't they? You know what I mean? But I do think I like what TJ's saying in response, and I feel like he seems very mentally stable. And I think that this is going to be a real test for Aljamain Sterling as well. Not that Petr Yan's not. I personally think Petr Yan's the best bantamweight in the world. And those two fights were fantastic. But TJ's a great wrestler too. So I don't think that this is I think a lot of people that are picking Aljamain Sterling think it's going to be kind of easy. And I don't see it that way. I think this is going to be competitive. I think it's going to be long. I do think it's going to go to a decision. I'll give my pick here as I'm picking TJ Dillashaw. I would never pick against him. But I do think it's going to be very competitive. I don't know how exciting it's going to be, but I think it's going to be competitive. I think it's going to go the distance. And I do think TJ Dillashaw is going to win the fight.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for Aljo, because I don't think TJ Dillashaw is an easy fight for anybody.
For sure.
But I do think, remember we said the same thing about Corey Sandhagen when he was on his rise, and then Aljo did what he did to Corey.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's going to happen in that way. But I've heard the chatter, I've read the stuff online of them two going back and forth, TJ and Aljo, about the wrestling. But I really do think this might be one of those fights where TJ underestimates Aljo on the ground. And I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say Aljamain Sterling by submission in this fight.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's just one of those. I just have a weird feeling. It's one of those fights. Like, I'll say this. If I'm Aljo, I'm not standing and trading with TJ Dillashaw. I just won't do it. I won't do it. So we're going to see who's the better wrestler. Well, during his rise to the top, Aljo was known for his ground game. And I think we will see it in this fight. But the guy you called the best bantamweight in the world, Petr Yan, I'll say it. A crazy fight against Sean O'Malley. Yeah. One that we saw get made out of nowhere. One that I didn't understand. Sean O'Malley and his team really liked the matchup. I don't want to say they're crazy, but both parties had to agree to this fight. So Petr Yan either just really wants to show he's at the top of the bantamweight division on the same night as the title fight, or there's something interesting to him about Sean O'Malley. Maybe he wants to end the hype train. I don't know what it is, but this is a huge fight for both guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think for Petr Yan, he just wanted to fight. The top of bantamweight started to get booked up real quick, and he was left with no dance partner. So I imagine Sean O'Malley gets offered. He thinks it's a favorable matchup for him. He thinks he's the more skilled fighter. I don't blame him. I would have to agree. Sean O'Malley's a big name, whether you like him or not. He gets a lot of attention. It's win-win for Petr Yan, unless he loses, obviously, which I don't think he's going to. Then you have Sean O'Malley, who comes off the no contest to Pedro Munoz, who I actually thought he was losing that fight. He doesn't agree. And then the UFC calls him with Petr Yan. Why would he say no? He's supposed to lose this fight. So he has absolutely nothing to lose. If he loses, all right, you're supposed to. You're the biggest betting underdog on the main card. If you win, you just beat the number one ranked bantamweight contender in the world, and you are skyrocketing yourself into title position. So I think it's a win-win for O'Malley. I'm in no way, shape, or form surprised that he took the fight. For Petr Yan, which I do think he's going to win, you just put yourself a little bit at risk, because if you lose, it's like, well, shit, you were supposed to win that fight, dude. Not that Sean O'Malley's not dangerous, because he is. I just think Petr Yan's the more skilled fighter.
Quick answer here. What does it do for Sean O'Malley? How serious does he get taken in this division? And what does it do it for his career if he beats Petr Yan?
It's huge.
Does
Because
it
his
skyrocket him into a title fight? Like, what do you think here?
If not, he gets very close, because his first step up in competition was Pedro Munoz. That ends in a no contest, and he was losing that fight. Petr Yan is on a different level than Pedro Munoz, and by a long shot. So if Sean O'Malley can find a way to win this fight, that is huge. I don't know. It depends on how this fight goes, obviously, with TJ and Aljo. But he could absolutely be right up there, if not in a title eliminator next with a Corey Sandhagen or something. You know what I mean? It all depends on how the title fight shakes out, because Aljo has beaten some of these guys already, whereas TJ hasn't. So I just think it depends on how it shakes out. But I guess then you have Corey, who has lost to both. So he could very well put himself in a title fight if he wins.
Yeah, and I'll go out on a limb and say I think it's a UFC wet dream. Corey Sandhagen, Sean O'Malley next. I mean, unless
they're
Sean
both
O'Malley,
so weird. I would love to see it.
right? Exactly. Like their styles are, I don't want to say similar, but they're both so unpredictable.
Exactly.
I
think
that's
the word. I think I always say that's what makes Corey Sandhagen so dangerous. He might not be the best at any particular skill compared to other people in the division. Like, there may always be somebody better than him at something. It's his unpredictability that makes him so dangerous.
Yeah, and I agree there. So you're obviously taking Petr Yan.
I am.
I'm gonna take Yan as well. I think it's stupid to just bet against Kelly, number one, and two, to go against like the smart pick here. We're gonna kind of move a little more quickly through this main card, because I want to get your thoughts on something we saw through a mutual friend in the boxing world. We'll finish off with this main card and then the featured prelim. So next we got Beneil Dariush against Mateusz Gamrot. We kind of talked about this already. Listen, Beneil's fired up. He is so dangerous, as is Mateusz Gamrot. This is the as Ariel Helwani likes to say, this is the people's main event, in my opinion. It could be Petr Yan and Sean O'Malley, but I like this fight a lot.
I love it. And let me just say, I have watched Mateusz Gamrot and Arman Tsarukyan fight probably 25 times. That fight was gorgeous. The scrambles in that fight were unbelievable, and it was just a thing of beauty to watch. So I'm very high on Gamrot. But like you said, Beneil Dariush is criminally underrated. That man is a psycho in the octagon. He is so dangerous. He is fired up. He believes that he's done enough already to be in a title position. I think he further wants to prove that. So he has a little bit more UFC experience. Not that I think that necessarily matters, since Gamrot's done so much outside of the UFC. But motivation alone, I'm going to go Beneil Dariush here.
Yeah, I'm literally saying like same thing. As a guy you didn't want to piss off, because he had an opportunity to really take advantage of this spotlight, and I think he's going to do just that. I'm going to take Beneil Dariush. Again, could be the fight of the night, in my opinion. Caitlin Chookagian, Manon Farot. That was my terrible impersonation of a French language. But listen, Caitlin Chookagian, she's got in my opinion, I believe she's got to show something here.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just say it flat out. Her opponent's not to be taken lightly. This will be a nice table setter to open the main card, but I think Caitlin Chukagian gets it done.
I'm gonna go with Madame Fira. Like the UFC is very high on her. She is progressing her way up the division. I have no reason to bet against her. She is a dangerous woman. And I mean, Caitlin Chikagian, I like her. She's obviously a very good fighter, but she hasn't done anything lately to impress me, whereas her opponent has. So I'm going to go if you're out here.
Featured prelim, Bilal Muhammad, Sean Brady. I just talked about a people's main event, but hell, you
I love
guys
this
at
one.
home are lucky. Your early afternoon featured prelim. If you can't enjoy Bilal Muhammad and Sean Brady on a Saturday afternoon, just watch I don't know, table tennis or something.
I was say
Because
you
this,
don't like the sport, then
right,
if you
right.
can't
This is
enjoy
gonna be a
that
hell of a
at any
fight.
time of the day.
And I think this fight, I feel so bad for saying this. I think this fight catapults Sean Brady into another dimension with a win. I love Bilal. Bilal's one of the first fighters to ever give me his time of day. But I see Sean Brady winning this, and I don't know if it's going to be very competitive.
I would have to agree with you. I am so high on Sean Brady. He competed at CFFC grappling a few months back, and I sat right behind his wife, actually. She's very sweet. And his parents are very nice too. He is a strong ass man. He submitted Ben Saunders and made it look like he was out to lunch. Like he is absolutely the dark horse of the division for me. This is the marquee fight that he's been looking for. No one wants to fight him, rightfully so. He's a silent killer. I think he wins, and I think he immediately puts himself right into the title mix, and I absolutely love it. All
Yeah.
love to Bilal, though, too. I do like Bilal a lot.
Yeah, Bilal's amazing, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
Listen, to credit to Bilal, I mean, now he's got Habib in his corner, Lewis Taylor, his coach. Like
100%.
he's got such a great corner. I'm excited. It really could steal the show. Even I think that fight could be so good if Bilal can really challenge Sean Brady. That fight could be the fight of the night.
Yeah.
But very quickly before I let you go, Kelly, I wanted to bring up a a tweet from a friend of ours, a mutual friend. He's killing the game. Probably everyone's favorite person in the world.
My
I thought that
boy.
was me for a while, but Ben the Bane Davis has been killing the game. Shout out to him. But he showed a picture, kind of a collage of Deontay Wilder, Mayer, Caleb Plant, and Devin Haney and George Kambosos all fighting this weekend. And the boxing, like, there's not enough. And he called out the boxing world and their marketing. Those are all happening. Okay, first and foremost, why are they all happening together? That's the first thing. Like, I understand the different titles and the weight classes, all of that, but if boxing is smart enough to make Canelo wait during a UFC pay-per-view and make him sit in the back for one of his fights in the past, as they have done, you got to be smarter than to put these fights, and I understand they're probably happening at different times and all that, but what is boxing's problem that here we are talking about? We have UFC this weekend. We have a great fight night this weekend. But boxing has these amazing superstars fighting, and there's no word on it.
First of all, Ben Davis, I love you so much. Met him at International Fight Week, and he's the best. Boxing continues to get in its own way because everybody's here talking about fights that we want to see that are not happening, or fights that we're hoping to see that aren't even in the works, instead of the fights that are actually happening. I've heard more about Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. than I have about any of these fights. And guess what? Terrence and Errol haven't booked that fight yet. And that's all I'm hearing about. I'm hearing about who Tyson Fury's going to fight, who Tyson Fury's not going to fight. Is he retired? Is he coming back? And then you have these mandatory fights that nobody even wants to see. So I love George Kambosos Jr. Did I know he was fighting Devin Haney this weekend? No, I didn't. Am I particularly excited about it? No, I'm not, because that first fight wasn't particularly exciting. Devin Haney had his way. He was quicker. He was more efficient. He was sharper. He was slicker. And like I said, I love George Kambosos Jr. I bet on him. And boy, was I wrong. So I just think boxing continues to get in its own way, where there's so many big fights that we want to see and we think we're going to get, and there's rumblings and speculation that it's going to happen, and it doesn't. And that's all people continue to talk about instead of the fights that are actually happening. And when you look at the slate of fights this weekend, they're fantastic. I love watching the Kayla Mayer box. Like, and
And
I didn't even know
Claressa
she was
Shields.
boxing this weekend.
And
Like,
Claressa Shields. Like, yeah.
Claressa Shields is a monster. I love
Yeah.
watching her do anything. Didn't know she was boxing this weekend. Like,
And then you have Deontay Wilder fighting. And as a guy who really needs to get it back, right, in the
yep.
division, in the spotlight, all we're focused on is, hey, when you fight Anthony Joshua, I've seen more Wilder Joshua conversations than previews of his fight. May I remind people, this is the boxing heavyweight division where anything can happen. We literally
and
saw
Deontay Wilder is one of the biggest names in the sport.
and
like,
nobody cares. Like, and it's, listen, how the UFC, and I will go against the boxing crowd right now, how the UFC treats International Fight Week and their one promotion should be how boxing, no matter what title and ABCs you are right now this weekend, and no matter who it is, and no matter what promotion you are, you should be loving this weekend. It should be dominating. Listen, I understand in America, we've got baseball playoffs. We got the NBA season just 5 days away. We're in the middle of the NFL season. We're not hearing anything on boxing, and it is so sad. It is so sad. I see the only thing going for boxing this weekend is that some of the fights are on ESPN, so they're getting broadcasted during like college football, and the Deontay Wilder fight is getting broadcasted commercial-wise during the baseball playoffs. That's it. That's it. It is so bad. It's disgusting. And if people want to have the conversation as to why the MMA world has taken over in popularity terms, then boxing, look no further than October 15th. The only thing I got to say to this boxing schedule this weekend and the UFC, thank you. I have a wedding to go to. I'm going to get a mobile charger, and I will be sitting there with, oh my God, congrats. Yeah, I don't, like, it's my cousin, but I'm always going to watch, but I don't count. You don't count, unfortunately. Like, no disrespect.
No,
you don't count.
This is what we do. You know what I mean? Like, I got to talk about all this stuff on my shows every day. Like, of course I'm going to be watching. It just sucks that I didn't even know what was going on. And if there were people that would know what was going on, it would be myself. It would be you. It would be Ben Davis. Like, because we're involved in the combat sports world, and it's the people we follow. It's the things we see every day, and it's just crickets.
Well, let's not end on crickets. Let's end on Kelly Murphy is absolutely killing the game. I'm so thankful. I'm glad we're still friends. I'm glad you still know I exist. I'm glad you're killing it at Sirius XM. I mean, you have the new Chris Weidman show coming on October 17th. Remind me the name of it because I have very bad
Won't Back Down Radio with Chris Weidman, Mondays, 5 p.m. Eastern.
All right. And Kelly Murphy, you are doing so much in the combat world space at KMurphy25 on Twitter. I used to do the Instagram too, but I don't, we'll just stick to the Twitter. Follow Kelly on Twitter, support her in SiriusXM Fight Nation. Kelly, thank you for keeping our friendship going. Great stuff as always. And we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. We got to talk for 281 because you think it's the best card of the year.
I do. It is.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.